Good afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting the talk of today on fetal growth restriction. So, first, patient comes to us in Mrs. B. A, the resident of Patel Nagar, 27-year-old female with gravid 2 para 1, with 33-week of period of gestation and 32 weeks by first trimester scanning. And patient came with came for routine checkup. She had no complaints and adequate fetal movements and no chronic medical or surgical illness. So we had serial ultrasounds available to us till the time. So serial ultrasounds that were available to us were first trimester scan at 9+5 weeks with single live intrauterine fetus and expected EDD on 19th of January 2022. And level 2 scan with single intrauterine fetus at 18 and +4 week. And third trimester scan showed the biometry and the Doppler parameters. So biometry parameters were estimated fetal weight and abdominal cut both were less than 10 centile. So the baby was small. Now we had to know if the baby was physiologically small or pathologically small. So we go ahead with the Doppler studies. In Doppler, we could found the umbilical artery ST ratio more than 95th centile and pulsatility index more than 95th centile, and metacerebral artery less than 5th centile. So this baby was followed up. The baby presented. Baby was followed up with the weekly Doppler parameter screening and daily fetal movement assessment and NSTs twice weekly. So steroid cover was given for as it was less than 33 weeks, and we were planning for delivery at 37 weeks, and baby delivered at 37 weeks successfully by labor. So my talk is regarding whether we have to know that baby when it comes less than 10 centile and we know the baby is small. We need to know it is physiologically small or pathologically small. And is the baby safe inside, and to balance the growth in utero, and if the baby is fetal is under stress, then timely deliver the baby. So talk is regarding to balance iatrogenic prematurity versus stillbirth or intrauterine demise. So I would introduce it as like it was in Williams and WHO defined it initially as below 10 centile of recommended gender specific birth weight for gestation age reference area. So centile word here means that if we have suppose we have 200 people around us, and I would say I'm at 95th centile. So I would say that 190 people are below and 10 people are above. So centile word has different meaning. It is about the number of people when distributed and where you fall. So less than 10 centiles. So always in a population 10 centile of the people will be small, and then we have to differentiate. Either they are small physiologically or pathologically small, that is fetal growth restricted. So retardation term was taken because it was had an association with mental retardation, so it was modified for fetal growth restriction. So it is as a failure of fetus to achieve predetermined genetic growth potential, and consequently the babies are at risk of perinatal morbidity and mortality. So the origin of this illness could be a fetal, placental, maternal. So I would be saying that less than 10 centile of estimated fetal weight as per the ACOG is SGA. As per RCOG, estimated fetal weight and abdominal circumference below the 10 centile. So we go for an ultrasound, we see the centile chart, we see the estimated fetal weight. If it's less than 10 centile, we need to know it is SGA, physiologically small, or FGR, pathologically small. Then we need to know whether it is early onset and late onset. So early onset term for less than 32 weeks. So our etiology could be any of the following, like genetic factors, placenta, fetus, and maternal. So among the fetal conditions, there could be CDH, CHDs, and placental, there could be circumvallate placenta, placental tumor, marginal cord insertion. And maternal factors, the mother herself could be constitutionally small. She could be a smoker throughout her pregnancy or in the life from alcohol, poor nutrition, and severe anemia. Or mother could be having a pre-existing illness like antiphospholipid syndrome, autoimmune, herself being case of cyanotic heart disease. So in usual conditions, when the placental anomalies or maternal illnesses or smoking, these are factors, they usually leads to the early onset of the fetal growth restrictions. So pathophysiology of the condition is like the Thrombosis, the pregnancies, there is normally hypercoagulable stage. So normally proteoglycans in the blood vessel walls, they are preventive. The hypercoagulable and endothelial cell dysfunction leads to vasoconstriction and reduced placental. There are things about the angiogenesis where VEGF and PIGF are increased, and apoptosis where decidual natural cells they can start killing, and the blood flow. So normally what we say is in pregnancy, the trophoblast layers they start invading the spiral arteries and the blood flow is increased. So fetus is a growing part of in the mother's body. It needs more blood. The uterine artery have high end-diastolic continuous forward flow, that is low impedance, low resistance circulation. So when there is a FGR of placental cause with high resistance, then if the resistance is itself high, then blood flow will be reduced and the growth of the fetus will be affected. And it would be depicted to us by elevated in the PI, S by D ratio and diastolic notch. So we see a placental insufficiency, the timing of the onset, usually due to the cause of the placenta, it's usually the early onset ones, the more seen. And the baby's response for the hypoxia, acidemia, and for their cardiovascular adaptation. So this being a very important slide, I like to say that an early onset FGR, we know we have diagnosed it in time. The problem with us lies in the management part. Usually seen in cases of placental disease, hypoxia is higher. So baby has throughout grown in the cases of hypoxia, so baby has higher tolerance to hypoxia. But there is higher chances of mortality and morbidities in early onset FGR. And luckily it constitutes less amount chunk of the all FGR babies, that is 20 to 30%. In late onset, the problem lies with us is diagnosis, because we know that it is crossed 32 weeks and this much of prematurity we can deal, but when to deliver is the time we need to know. So placental, do we need to diagnose it in time? The placental disease in these cases are usually mild. The hypoxia is it has not been throughout, it has been now been establishing. So the mature fetus has lower tolerance to hypoxia, but it is the most common cause of late stillbirth, and it is almost 70 to 80% of all FGR. So we in RBLK hospital, we go for parameters of SD ratio, PI, RI, and we usually see 4 vessels: uterine artery, middle cerebral artery, umbilical artery, and ductus venosus. So in level 1 scan also, we start following up the uterine artery Dopplers, and level 2 scan also we follow the in uterine artery Doppler in the level 1 scan, it could be a marker for aneuploidy. So it is been to follow up the scans, because uterine artery Doppler has got significance till second trimester. Later on, it offers a limited scan. So these are the ratios by which our radiologist team calculates the SD ratio, pulsatility index, and resist index. So there are charts available. When we were first calculated, then we will see on the charts for gestation, for umbilical artery, uterine artery, ductus venosus. Each of them will plot, and we'll see on which centile we fall on the charts. So once we have seen the chart, so this is a normal Doppler parameter. So normal Doppler in first trimester, as the resistance is relatively high, because the first layer of the trophoblast invasion is around 6 to 8 weeks. So the only resistance is high relatively, so systolic flow is only forward flow present in the first trimester. In second trimester, both in systole and diastole, the forward flows are present. And in late second and third trimester, a good amount of diastolic flow is also being present. So this is a normal Doppler studies in all the 3 trimesters. In umbilical artery Doppler, this was initially being considered as a only Doppler marking till 1995, and later on it was not recommended as standalone. So it is a primary surveillance tool for FGR babies. Still, it has got very much importance. Abnormality states PI or RI, that is pulsatility index and resistive index, more than 2 standard deviation. When these indices are abnormal and delivery is not indicated, so repeat surveillance is twice weekly in the fetus with absent with end diastolic flow being present, then it is twice weekly, and if it is absent or reversal, then it would be daily. So when these indices are normal, we repeat surveillance every 14 days. So umbilical artery Doppler in late second and third trimester has got very much of the importance, and it can by following the Doppler, and we can prevent unnecessarily delivery of the preterm, and we can also prevent if the baby is also under stress, then we can timely deliver the baby and have a chance to save the life. So in umbilical artery Doppler, when we do the Doppler umbilical arteries, the first picture depicts of the normal Doppler when there is forward flow present both during the systole and diastole, and the second picture because there is reversal of the flow in the diastolic component. So there is higher resistance. The less flow is going, the fetus growth is more likely to be restricted. So uterine artery Doppler, when it measures uteroplacental blood flow. So uteroplacental blood flow, which is more important to us by first and second trimester by 24 weeks. So at 20 to 24 week, if the pulsatility index is more than 95th centile, and if it is if there is none notching, it would be considered as abnormal. So uterine artery Doppler follow-up, as we do in our setting also in first and second trimester. This follow-up is important and it gives a centile, and we can predict the FGR early. So repeating uterine artery Doppler after in late second trimester or third trimester, it has got limited. So it offers us a scan early in the time. Now to the ductus venosus Doppler. So this ductus venosus Doppler, it actually depicts the fetus atrial pressure volume changes. So when there is increase after load and preload in the fetus, there is direct effect of the hypoxia and acidemia. And this ductus venosus Doppler, it gives us early, when we catch this up, it gives an early time of at least 2 weeks before these changes are seen in the arterial circulation. So it has got an important role in predicting the values of acidemia in the fetus and the adverse outcome. So this is a normal ductus venosus wave. So we can see there are 3 waves in this: systolic, diastolic, and A wave. The A wave should always be above the baseline. If the A wave is touching the baseline, or if the A wave is below the baseline, it means that it is absent of the A wave, or there is reversal of the flow in the A wave, and that would be a marker for acidemia. So increasing umbilical artery resistance and increasing central venous pressure, there is reduced diastolic flow, ductus venosus and large veins. Ductus venosus resistive index is increased and there is loss of A wave. So if there is absent or reversal of the A wave, it indicates cardiovascular instability and appending acidemia and death. Coming to the middle cerebral artery Doppler. So normally when the body tries to compensate, if there is a resistance of the flow and the blood flow is coming less, then body will try to preserve the viscera, which is important to the body. The fetus knows the brain is important, the resistance in the MCA is decreased. Therefore, there is a flow is increased. So it is called as brain sparing effect. So baby has tried to adapt to changes of higher resistance and giving more circulation at the brain level. So this again is with the PI of middle cerebral artery, the pulsatility index is always more than the umbilical artery. If this PI is equal to or less than, then we say that it is showing a brain sparing. So flow in the diastole is increased, but all other parameters are decreasing. And the ratio, cerebroplacental ratio, it is a ratio of cerebro means MCA PI, MCA pulsatility index divided by umbilical artery pulsatility index. Low of the cerebroplacental ratio, it indicates that fetal blood redistribution has occurred. The fetus has itself redistributed the blood, spared the brain, increases the flow in the brain. So in this picture, I would say that this you can see the umbilical artery. There, in control group, there is forward flowing systole and diastole. Then there is no blood flow to the placenta. At the same time, if you see the picture below it, the middle cerebral artery, there is increase in the flow in the diastole. And this increase in the flow in the diastole, it says as the diastolic flow is increased, the brain sparing effect on the middle cerebral artery we can see. So the diastolic surge increased of the blood, but all the parameters like SD ratio is being decreasing, RI decreasing, CPR being low. So it indicates the level of the baby is going under in the stress. So this being the most accepted definition so far, the Delphi consensus. So it says the gestation is being clear less than 32 weeks early, more than 32 weeks late. In absence of congenital anomaly, if estimated fetal weight or abdominal circumference less than third centile in the early FGR, or it is absent flow, or these ratios are less, and it is combined with uterine artery and umbilical artery PI with more than 95th centile. So pulsatility index being more is the resistance being more. In late onset, the weight of the fetus, estimated fetus weight and abdominal circumference, they are less. And there could be any two out of the three of the followings. That is the estimated fetal weight less than 10 centile, or estimated fetal weight or abdominal circumference crossing two quartiles on the growth centile, or cerebral placental ratio is less than 5th centile, or umbilical artery PI.
On request. Acha, 1 kg is on request. 1 kg, 1 kg.
So this is a picture which shows us the sequence of the event which are occurring in the early onset actually. So sequence starts like initially uterine artery PI would be increased, then cerebral placental ratio would get decreased, then umbilical artery PI being increased. Now hypoxia is getting centralized, MCA being PI decreasing, umbilical artery flow being absent. Then aortic isthmus is also seen in the cases like on advanced hypoxia, and they are, if the pulsatility index is more, they would suggest of advanced hypoxia or acidosis. This being in case of early onset. In case of late onset, like in uterine artery. So uterine artery PI we discussed, it has got a role in first trimester, second trimester. We follow up these scans. Then cerebral placental ratio, then middle cerebral artery PI, then aortic isthmus reversal and cardiotocography declarations. So once we have diagnosed this FGRs and we know the sequence. So why these are these biometric parameters for fetal growth restriction. So we know the most specific is abdominal circumference. It is 90.7% specific. That is why it has been taken in RCOG guidelines, and it has been taken in almost all the guidelines that estimated fetal weight and abdominal circumference being less than 10 centile is small. Then we need to know the physiologically or pathologically small. So how to proceed in case? So we have to identify small fetus. We have to differentiate the physiological and casting. We have to differentiate their early or late, and then we'll manage as per the stage-based protocol. So for identification, we should know accurately the LMP. If the mother is well educated and she has regular periods of 5 days in a 28-day cycle, the history could be good enough and accurate to predict the LMP. Otherwise, the first scan, the crown drop length in the first rating scan, gives us a picture to calculate the estimated delivery date. And if the estimated delivery date by ultrasound and by the history, there is a difference of more than 7 days. So we will take estimated delivery date by ultrasound in the first ultrasound, that is the dating scan. So in this picture, this is very important slide. We have to differentiate the stages. So first stage, what we say is low estimated fetal weight less than 3rd centile with mild placental resistance, that is cerebral placental ratio less than 5th centile, uterine artery pulsatility index more than 95th centile, and middle cerebral artery pulsatility index less than 5th centile. Second stage would be the severe placental disease or redistribution. There would be absent end-diastolic flow and aortic isthmus more than 95th PI, and severe hemodynamic adaptation or low suspicion of acidosis. The ductus venosus changes shows pulsatility index of more than 95th centile, and there is reversal in the umbilical arteries, reversal of the end-diastolic flow. And stage 4 would say the suspicion of the acidosis or high risk of death, in which there is A wave is reversed in ductus venosus, as we can see in the picture, this A wave going down, and computerized topography showing declarations of reduced short-term variability, reduced STD. So once we have staged the Doppler findings, we need to stage at least 12 hour apart, two Doppler findings to confirm the staging. And when we get this stage, so in stage 1, we have to weekly monitor for the Doppler parameters, and we can, if we should deliver by the labor induction unless otherwise indicated for cesarean. In all other cases, stage 2 to 4, cesarean section is advised, as the baby is already under the stress and we don't want to take the stress of the labor out to the baby. So stage 2, their monitoring is bi-weekly required, stage 3, 1 to 2 days, and stage 4, 12 hours. So all Doppler signs, they should be confirmed at least twice to confirm the stage. Once we know that the stage, Once we know, suppose we know it is stage 4, we have confirmed it twice, we know it is more than 26 weeks, we can go ahead with cesarean section and deliver the baby. And if it is the situation is not so, we can follow up as per the monitoring required. So can we know it any time earlier, or we have to wait all the time till third trimester? No. We should, when the antenatal mother comes to us, we should be having a history, booking history. We should assess the risk factors. We should assess the mother being having minor risk factors, major risk factors. So in minor risk factor, there are 3 or more of the mentioned minor risk factor, or even one of the major risk factor. We straightway consider aspirin. So aspirin, when considered, should be considered less than 16 weeks. Why? Because aspirin is a vasodilator, and trophoblastic invasion, second wave of trophoblastic invasion ends by 16 weeks. So there is no role of giving aspirin after 16 weeks. So only aspirin role when it is given less than 16 weeks. So we reassess the situation at 20 weeks. If PAPA score is less than 0.1 median MOM and fetal echogenic bowel is major, so we'll see straightway go for, if we have the risk factor, we straightway found this situation, we straightway go for umbilical artery Doppler from 26 to 28 weeks. Of the 3 or more of the minor risk factors are only present, then we go for uterine artery. So uterine artery Doppler offers a scan in the first scan, anti-NB scan, second scan. At that time, uterine artery Dopplers are to value to us. Beyond that, we'll again assess for the umbilical artery Doppler. And once we reach a stage of 26 weeks, then we'll assign for the staging and we'll follow up as per the staging protocols mentioned. So, can there be any other investigation? Yes, like we could, the investigation like karyotyping can be done for aneuploidies, for trisomies 13, 18, 21, and we could work up for the infection. We should go for the NST, biophysical profile CTG, but they don't have a significant independent role. The doctor has got a role. And following up the fetus around 26 weeks, 23 weeks, and before that. So antenatally, coming to the last part of my presentation, that is the antenatal management. So antenatal management, as per the evidence we mentioned, so in nutrition, though in nutrition, we know that in minor risk factor, there was a risk factor of low fruit intake. And then in this picture, we can see the low fruit intake mentioned in the first trimester as a minor risk factor. But this fruit intake has to be perinatally important. So if once that has been established, the nutrition. So once the mother was admitted and seen for given a balanced energy protein ratio, and then who they were suspected. So there was not much of the role once it was suspected and once we have crossed the situation. And for vitamin C, vitamin E, omega-3 fatty acid, calcium, marine oil, and progesterone, as per the Cochrane reviews serially mentioned, they have no evidence. So nutrition of the mother perinatally, yes, it is important. It reduces one of the risk factor. It may reduce, but for overall, once it is established, once crossed first trimester, then won't say. Then bed rest. So this was study in Cochrane 2000. Around 900 mothers were being admitted and they were given bed rest in the hospital, and they were followed up when they were being suspected for the fetal growth restriction. So there was no statistically different significant fetal growth parameter. So complete bed rest, again, we could not find any evidence to suggest the same. Smoking. So this was a very interesting study, 2006 to 2012. There was 9.2 lakh births were analyzed. 75% of the mothers did not smoke. And of those who smoked, only in the pre-conception period, there was no significant increase. But smoking in any trimester has the highest risk for the FGR, and the mother who smoked throughout the pregnancy, they reported highest number of the FGR babies. So smoking has definitely a deteriorating role for the fetus. Coming to the antiplatelet agent aspirin, so as we discussed, the evidence says the same. Starting at 16 week or less, the relative risk of having SG infant baby is 0.47, and if started after 16 weeks, 0.92. So there is no benefit if started after 16 weeks. There is benefit if started before 16. Antenatal corticosteroid, any mother having threatened preterm delivery less than 34 weeks definitely should be given the courses of antenatal corticosteroid, and even a single dose would benefit the baby. It has been proven it reduces risk of respiratory distress, intraventricular hemorrhage, and AIDS. So we know proven preventive measures. If we know the mother has periconceptionally come to us, we should optimize her maternal medical condition of any autoimmune condition or any on the congenital heart disease condition. Mother should be advised to smoke. Smoking should be stopped, and if antiplatelet agent should be started in before 16 weeks, so it has got a level C recommendation. If mother is in the endemic regions of the malaria, anti-malarial can be done. An accurate dating scan would give us the exact period of gestation with around 5 to 7 days of plus minus, and that would give us the exact timing of intervention as we know the accurate period of gestation. So this picture says the importance, like when we stage a baby, a fetus for 26 week, and we stage it in stage 4, then again we have to repeat it at 12 hours, and then if it has been confirmed more than 26 weeks, we go for elective section. For 30 weeks, if the stage 3 and it is repeated more than 30 weeks being crossed, we'll go. We have already seen the staging parts, and only stage 1 of the FGR and more than 37 weeks, they are your trial for the induction of the labor, and they should be delivered by labor, normal delivery, vaginal delivery, unless there are other risk factors. So this was, there are 3 important trials I could find that it was GRID trial, and it was RCT, that was effect of immediate delivery versus expectant management and the fetal growth restricted. There was no significant difference in neurodevelopmental outcome. Similarly, in the DIGITATE study, they could compare the effect of induction versus expectant management in singleton pregnancy beyond 36 weeks. Again, they could not find any difference in the neurodevelopmental outcome of the baby. But in Truffle study, they had 3 intervention arms. First was the early ductus venosus changes, like late ductus venosus changes, and the reduced fetal heart rate, short-term variability, and computerized tachography. So they there was a definitive, they could find that the computerized tachography safety net criteria that they found, if safety net is spontaneous, repeated, persistently unprovoked fetal heart declarations in all 3 arms, or short-term variability of less than 2.6 millisecond at 26 to 28 plus 6 week, less than 3 millisecond at 29 to 31 plus 6 week in ductus venosus arm. If this criteria has been met, then baby should be delivered. And those who was the safety net criteria was followed, they had a better neurodevelopmental, significantly better neurodevelopmental outcome at 2 years of age. There was also a Strider trial of when sildenafil report studies were found that it could find, but in Strider trial it was said that there is no benefit of giving sildenafil. So can FGR be prevented? Somewhat we can, like there is no consistent evidence of dietary modification, progesterone or calcium. Yes, some of smoking cessation definitely got a role. Bed rest, maternal nutrients, beta mimetics, maternal oxygenation, plasma volume, they have got no evidence till far in Cochrane reviews. Low dose of aspirin in mothers who are at risk and increased risk of preeclampsia. And if timely started less than 16 weeks, and starting scanning the major and minor risk factor as per the RCOG, and booking time, we also know how to follow for the Doppler change. So heparin and enoxaparin, they are not routinely recommended. Antenatal glucocorticoid less than 34 weeks, definitely yes. Magnesium sulfate is 32 weeks, definitely yes. So I would say that FGA and SGA, they're not synonymous. SGA is physiologically small baby, and FGA is their pathologically small baby. So we need to intervene, and in cases of pathologically small, if they're physiologically small and constitutionally small, they are normal, because they are at slightly higher risk. And ultrasound and Doppler monitoring, they are the cornerstones of the fetal surveillance babies. And we have to see the modifiable risk factors at initial ANC visit. We have to time of the delivery to improve the nutrition in the mother. At periconceptional nutrition has got a role. Good fruit intake at that time has got a role. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Very well presented. I think Dr. Payal is here. Dr. Payal, just
Yes,
give your final comments, then I can ask some questions after that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here actually. Hi, doctor, and everyone. Yes, actually, it is rightly said that we do the monitoring in a similar manner. Once we have the abdominal circumference, which is less than third percentile, we do the monitoring in the similar manner. That is, if there is a small for gestational age baby, in that case, all other parameters, they remain normal. Whereas in case the baby is having, we suspect it as a fetus with growth restriction, then we go in for the parameters, that is the Doppler parameters, in which the umbilical artery is the one which is the most important. We have to look at the waveform of the umbilical artery. The umbilical artery waveform, in routine cases, it has a high, it will be having a low resistance, that is a forward diastolic flow, as he rightly mentioned in all his slides. We look for that waveform. Once we see that the resistance is started increasing, we see the values of the PI, they are getting decreased. And once we have the end diastolic velocity, which is absent or there is a reversal, it is an indicator for us that we have to inform the gynae team. We have to inform them, yes, this is going to happen and there is going to be a problem, in which case the monitoring is required, correctly mentioned, at every 24 hours. Till the time the end diastolic velocity is absent, we can still go in for a monitoring which is bi-weekly. But in case it has become reversal, then we have to do it daily. And the next parameter rightly mentioned, the most important is we have to look for the ductus venosus flow. In case we get the A wave reversal in ductus venosus, it is an alarming situation for us that we have to immediately tell the gynae people this pregnancy cannot continue further. So correctly mentioned, we are monitoring similar protocol we are using in our department here, and we are following with these guidelines. If anyone has any question, can ask me definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pyle, for your comment. But for last many years, I found that in our department, we still found that the SD ratio is still given with, and there is no, mean PI of umbilical artery. And most of the time, it is the individual right and left PI. And most of the time, the gynecologist send us for reference regarding SD ratio. Why we should use SD ratio? I think we should not use the SD ratio nowadays.
Yeah, we are not using, actually in our, what happens is some of the people in the department, yes, directly, they were following SD ratio protocol, but at present, all of us are following with the PI guidelines only. And we are taking the values according to the normograms, the tables we have, and then only we are making our reports, and definitely the CPR also, the cerebroplacental ratio. We are taking the PI values and then we are dividing it. I think we should try to communicate with others also, with all the other radiologists, that actually we people are going in with the PI values only, not with the SD ratio, because the PI value is the one which is the most sensitive.
Yeah, but
And
still,
specific.
even the I saw a few reports, I think few days back also, they are still mentioning the right and left umbilical artery.
Actually, umbilical artery,
Not mentioning the mean PI. I think mean PI is more important than individual.
The umbilical artery in our department, we are taking a single only. The uterine arteries, definitely we are taking the right and the left uterine arteries. But the uterine arteries.
Yeah, so I'm talking about uterine only.
Yes. Because in the right uterine arteries, we are taking right and left uterine arteries, and the uterine arteries, yes, SD ratio. Again, it has no role. Again, we have the role of pulsatility index only. But yes, as a protocol, we are mentioning all the three values, that is RI values, PI values, and SD ratio. But when we make our final report, and if we have a case of IUGR, we are taking the parameters of PI ratio only and then making a final comment and deciding upon the follow-up of those fetus which are having growth restriction.
Okay.
So we are following up with the so we are following up with the PI values only actually, and making a final report and communicating it to the gynae team.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pyle, for joining.
Okay. Thank you.